If your student is applying to a competitive university or one where they're considered for maybe a large scholarship, they might have an admissions interview to prepare for. So in today's video, I want to share 3 major college admissions questions and how your student can prepare for those. Just a quick note, we never want to walk in there unprepared. So this is critical if your student's interviewing for either money or admissions. Now make sure you hit subscribe because every week we release a new strategy to help your family work towards a debt-free degree. Hey there, my name is Jocelyn Pearson, founder of the Scholarship System, and that's what we do. We teach families how to build a strong financial future by avoiding decades of student loan debt. In fact, our main weapon against student loan debt are scholarships. And oftentimes scholarships will have some kind of interview aspect. In fact, I had a scholarship that it resulted in 4 years of $4,000 per year. So it was a big win, but it did require an interview. That does not mean that all students will be required to interview whenever they're applying to colleges. This is typically more focused on more competitive programs or schools or more competitive scholarships. Now in the scholarship system, we have an entire lesson all about video essays and interviews. So if you're a member, check it out. If not, you can learn more at the link in the description all about our 6-step course. Okay, so what are the common questions? The first one will be no surprise, and it is, tell me about yourself. When working with your student on an answer to this does not mean that we want to recite every word in our bio or a resume, and we also don't want your student talking about their family members, their dog, their cat, how many siblings they have. When they're asking this, they want to know what sets your student apart. Think of this more as a highlight reel of a resume, not a play-by-play. We want to focus on the most impactful pieces of our past and really leave a lasting impression. Now, I have an entire video all about just tell me about yourself. So we will link to that in the description as well as somewhere here on the screen so we can go there for more depth. But this is a common one. The last point I want to make here is this is a great opportunity for a student to show that they are thinking about their future. What do they want to be and why? What experiences do they have, or leadership experiences or passions that they have that align with it, that has really put them on the path to this future? So we want to think more future facing versus just recap of our history. But we can always sprinkle in those experiences in the past to really show, hey, I know what I'm doing, or I have validated what I want to do, etc. All right, the second question, and this is more focused on admissions versus scholarships, but it is, why do you want to go here? Many times students here, they'll talk about school ranking, the weather, the location, but really we want to get in more depth. Admissions, people want to see that your student did their research and really thought more about where they want to go, what they want to be. So we want to think outside the box. One of the great ways to do this is to do some research on the site. Go a little bit more in depth, maybe find some actual articles that were recently released rather than just say their main headline on their website. We can read what other students are saying or take a tour and ask students what they love about the university and keep notes. What is it that we love that they said? We also don't want to just regurgitate what their mission is or their values, but show how we can connect with those. So say that they are very community focused. You don't want to just say that, oh, I'm community focused as well, but have your student actually show that they're community focused as well. Have your student come up with actual stories and examples from their past that show that they align with it. The last thing I want to mention here is we want to avoid cliches like, oh, it just feels like home. That's a little too generic, a little too broad, and they probably heard it over and over. Now, going off of the previous question of tell me about yourself, if we answered that and already shared what we want to be and why, we can often tie that also to why do we want to go here. Maybe you found that they have a club that's related to it, or maybe they're top in the program, but you went a step further and found that they do a capstone project in that area and you love the real world experience. So do more research, get a little deeper, and make sure that your student has a deeper answer on this versus just a surface level one of, oh, well, you're great in my major. Okay, here's the third question, and this is a common one that actually we can see on scholarship as well. And that is, where do you see yourself in 5 years or X years? Where do you see yourself in the future? This is the way that committees can weigh if your student is thinking about their future, if they've really created a plan. Now, just to note here, they know that students change their mind. That is normal and par for the course. But the fact that your student has thought it through and thinks that they figured it out or has reasons for why they're selecting what they're selecting, that shows critical thinking skills. It shows that they're planning for a future, and it shows that they're not just going to college just to go to college. Oftentimes, I tell students if they really are undecided, maybe go down to 1 or 2 things that we're interested in, and we can kind of dabble in both. But by doing that, it's a lot easier to envision what does our future look like in 5 years. And maybe by prepping for this question, they might narrow it down to 1. Now, we don't want to stay generic and just say, I expect to have a job in this field. Think greater than that. As a parent, you can have a conversation with your students and say, well, what does a normal day look like? Or what activities are you doing? Or can you do any kind of community service with that as well? We want to keep it realistic and achievable, but also it can be inspiring. And lastly, we want to be detailed. Now, the other thing that I would say is if this question has a limited word count, we could just say with my degree and go into what we think we're going to be doing. So there's ways that we can kind of reduce the word count there. We don't want to waste word count on letting them know, hey, I plan on graduating college, because that should be obvious if you're applying to schools. Okay, now with your student, again, like I mentioned, prepping for interviews. If they are in a situation where they're interviewing for admissions, then they can be a strong candidate for scholarships. So please don't forget that there are scholarships out there that also have interview aspects, but if they're thinking through these stories and coming up with a well-formulated answer, then they can often use those even for scholarship essays. So if you want to learn more about how I build a list of legitimate scholarships with less competition, you can check out my free webinar at thescholarshipsystem.com/free webinar. You can also find it linked in the description along with everything else that I've referred to. So let me know in the comments, is your student interviewing? And if so, what for? Is it admissions? Is it a scholarship? Let me know in the comments. I would love to see how students are facing or why they're facing these interviews. All right, so that said, while an interview can be extremely intimidating for students, working with them, talking through these questions will make it much easier, and we'll be able to keep them calm when answering because they'll feel prepared and they'll have answers in their back pocket. Even if the questions aren't exactly these 3 questions, if they have answers to these 3 questions, they can pull from these stories, pull from these examples, and use them for other questions that they ask. But I'd be willing to bet that they will come across at least one of these during an interview. All right, I hope that was helpful. In the comments, if you want to give me a thumbs up or comment and say it was helpful, I would love to hear that. And make sure you hit subscribe, because every week we have a new strategy for you on working towards that debt-free degree with your student. I'll see you there.